it gives me great pleasure to firstly invite Keith Gunaratne, who is the founder and the executive director of EPNT, so that he can give us a quick introduction. He's an innovator. He's passionate about understanding the DNA of buildings and helping buildings become energy efficient. Keith, are you here with us? Hi,
I'm here.
I'm so excited to have you here with us, Keith. Welcome to iRecvest Global. And I personally believe the EPNT is doing some phenomenal work, and it would be an honor to hear from you the vision for the company and the vision you have to create a more energy efficient world.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And it's good to meet everyone here today. EPNT was founded in 1993, so quite a few years ago. And we innovated technologies to unlock the DNA in buildings with some amazing teams working together, some crazy amazing teams working together. By using real data for over 20 years, and currently we are working in 5 continents as a consequence. So that's the background of the company. And what we do is we use real live data from buildings, about 5+ billion sets of data we are using per year. And we use this data to use with artificial intelligence, machine learning to transform and filter to ensure that we get this data into valuable actions into buildings. And it generates about 7 to 25% savings in buildings. And of course, we guarantee outcomes. So that's the background of the business.
Right. And a little bit about about your, would you like to talk about what you're doing in Dubai, or would you like us to invite the participants and then we take it from there?
Yes, please do speak, do proceed there. And one other thing I would like to highlight whilst on the topic is that in terms of the technology that we have developed, we are currently monitoring about 14 million graphs per day.
Yes, I mentioned that.
Yes, graphs per day. So that again delivers a significant amount of effort. But one thing to note is that in this type of technology, if we were to manually monitor 14 million graphs per day, we would have to employ 500,000 people.
Wow.
So that's the technology we are talking about here.
Right.
And so I thought that was important. Thank you.
Wow, that is incredible. And I think we'll take this discussion forward. I'd like to invite the other panelists on this discussion. We have Mr. Craig Rogers, who is an innovation lead and property specialist, joining us all the way from Australia. Welcome, Mr. Craig. We have Mr. Neville Moreira, who is a general manager of Place Communities, who is joining us from the UAE. And this session will be moderated by Mr. Waqar Hassan, who is the CEO of Etihad Community Management, again, joining us from the UAE. May I please request the host to allow the panelists to join so that we can begin with this very interesting round. Meanwhile, Keith, would you like to tell us, okay, so everyone's coming on, but we would love to know the right answers to the polling that we did just a little while back.
How? I don't have the questions with me right now, but if you ask me the question.
No worries, I will circle back to it later, but we have all our panelists here. Can we request hi Craig. Hi Waqar, so good to see you. I think you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi.
Hi. And Mr. Rogers, I think, is left for some reason. Needs to jump back in. Hi Neville, nice to see you today. Hello, Mr. Craig. I'm going to hand this over to Waqar, and I'm going to enjoy the panel discussion. Thank you so much.
Harsha, hi, how are you? Hello, Keith.
I'm very well. Welcome to the panel, and handing over to Waqar.
Thank you.
Thank you, Harsha. Welcome, Keith. I think everyone has already had a very good introduction of Mr. Keith Gunaratne, and also of Craig, and we have Mr. Neville Moreira with us. Gentlemen, welcome to the discussion.
Thank you.
The topic, when I saw it was extremely overwhelming and so much interesting that, I thought that by just attending this session and being part of it, I'm doing half my job to reduce the service charges. So the first thing that clicked my mind was that we're talking about reducing service charges, and then we have got some very fancy and seemingly very expensive technologies, artificial intelligence and machine learning. And we are at the same time trying to reduce the service charge, maintain client comfort, and bring buildings towards net zero, and at the same time be commercially viable. These seem all very conflicting. Let me get all of your insight into this. Neville, let's start with you. What is your take on this?
Thank you, Walker. Thank you so much. My take on this is we have a responsibility as building managers and operators to ensure that while we are providing comfort to occupants, we are doing it at an optimal level in terms of finances and in terms of delivery. Now, what has been happening is over the past few years, we have seen an increase in building designs not being compatible with the energy that they use. So in other terms, our buildings are eating more than they kill, so to say. We have very high energy consumption, but that cost is being passed on to the owners, which is not ideal at the moment. So what we are trying to do right now, and part of the conversation we're going to have today, is how do we strike a balance between saving the finances, which is service charges, as well as maintaining the comfort of the occupants in the building at a level where it's not compromised. I think my take on this is it is possible. It is something that's actually going to be increasingly demanded by owners in terms of sustainability, and in terms of regulatory parameters is also something that's not going to be negotiable.
I see. Craig, how do you see this?
Thank you, Waqar. I think net zero is a challenging target for us all globally in real estate. And, I just want to first applaud all the businesses and regions that have made this commitment to transition towards net zero, because it is a challenge for us all. In Australia, we're seeing many businesses, owners, and also customers are setting targets for their transition to net zero with timelines for 2030 to 2050. So, I've been very lucky to be involved in setting some pathways for transitioning to net zero on large portfolios here in Australia. And, I share the view of Neville. I think that it is achievable. And, based on the experience, I don't think that these two items are conflicting. And the reason I think that is because the pathway to net zero is really a large piece of work that requires a clear plan and roadmap, and it needs to be broken down into small pieces and delivered over an extended time frame, sometimes 20 years or more. And I think having a time frame of this amount really allows building owners and operators to budget correctly and be able to plan for the necessary implementations, in a way that enables them to digest the cost of those implementations around energy reduction strategies, and hopefully some of these implementations will realize savings, for owners that can be redeployed into new technologies. And in parallel to this, it gives owners and operators the opportunity to plan out a strategy, a well-considered strategy for the procurement of renewable energy, which is the other large expensive piece of the net zero transition. And I think if those two factors are considered, and we're seeing renewable energy here in Australia now actually come down in price as more technology and more capacity is available. So hopefully over this extended period of time, we're going to implement technology to save money, and we're going to see renewable energy come down in cost. And then hopefully we won't see a conflict between business as usual and the transition to net zero.
Thank you, Craig. Taking this question to Keith, before you answer this question, Keith, why don't you tell us about net zero? Because I mean, that's something that I think myself and the audience would like to know. So what are we talking about when we say net zero?
Yes, thank you, Waka. Absolutely. In broadly speaking, a building that produces more energy than it consumes in carbon terms is a net zero building, right? But if you then go to the World Green Build Council definition, a net zero building is that is highly efficient, highly energy efficient, and and it is fully powered by from on-site or off-site renewable energies. That is a very simple, clear definition of a net zero building. So the net effect on planet Earth is a positive effect, and that is very important.
I see. So how do you reduce costs with and net zero? What is the relationship in reducing costs and going towards net zero? How does it help?
Yes. So I guess to make a building net zero, I mean, there are broad ways of doing it, but there are four things that generally I look at. Firstly, is to reduce the energy use. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's most probably the most effective and the quickest way you can do it. Although there are a lot of other ways of doing it. And we can maybe speak a little bit later and on how do you reduce energy in a building. But the second step is absorption. So how do you take a building and you have the building envelope, and how do you look at the energies in the building envelope, around the building and under the building? So if you reduce the energy absorption through convection, radiation, and conduction, then you can reduce energy that's seeping into the building, or you want it to seep out of the building, right? Depending on the weather conditions. The third is reuse of energy. For example, if you look at the Middle East market, you see that, and in most other markets, you can see that if you take the return air in our air conditioned systems, and we use heat exchangers to pre-cool the supply air to get fresh air, the energy savings are significant. So you're reusing. You're using technology to do that. So that's just one of the several examples. And of course, the fourth is renewable energies. So in other words, if you can produce a level of solar power within a building, including wind, by the way, because it should not be ignored. But we understand that in buildings with large density, which is typical for Dubai, what you're trying to do here is to save every little bit in the net zero process, like what Craig was addressing, and then Neville was addressing as well. So you have to get every incremental saving. We can't say, well, I can't save 5%, but it's okay to save 0.5%. That adds. So this is the journey of the 4 steps. I think that broadly speaking, you can get into the net zero.
I think a lot of managers, including myself, at some point I've had this mindset, 1%, 2%, or 5% energy saving. I know that's that's not good enough or worth an effort to do it. But I think what you're saying is that every bit counts is something new to learn. How does EP&T come into the picture, and what have you been doing to reduce energy consumption? And
yes,
you shed some light on that.
So there's a number of things we do, but broadly speaking, one of our key focuses, and that has been quite very successful in the UAE market, is we collect data in buildings. And we collect data, we clean the data. We put sensors, or we use existing sensors, and then we clean the data. Then we combine those data, and we collect currently about 5.2 billion sets of data per year from buildings. And then we can use weather data and a lot of other data. And we have also a database on top of this, about 40 billion plus data. We then use technologies that we have developed over 20 years, right? And we use machine learning and artificial intelligence to filter that amount of data to produce about 14 million graphs per day, right? And then those graphs realistically result in delivering actionable items to the building engineers.
Okay.
And those actionable items results in about between 7 to 25% savings in energy in buildings. Now, if I really look at it, and this is the benefit of technology. If we were to monitor 14 million graphs per day, we would have to employ 500,000 people. And if you really look at that logic, that's what most people traditionally tend to do in buildings and still continue to do. And that's where technology should be used in a meaningful way to deliver savings. And in that sense, with the numbers we do, we also guarantee savings for our clients as well, and which is fundamentally
very, very interesting and some very good numbers. Neville, you are a community manager. You have over 10 years of experience. You've worked with some very reputable names like DIFC. You've worked with the Jumeirah Hotels and Jumeirah Group. You've also worked with 2 private community management companies. You're currently heading Place Communities. You worked with 360 Communities before. And you're looking at a very prestigious set of portfolio in the UAE real estate.
Yeah.
And you talked about service charge, and you more than anyone else are aware of the pressure that is there on community managers to reduce service charge. Yes. So how and why did you focus on reducing service charge and using what was your approach to reducing service charges?
Okay, so I think what would be the best way to approach your question is to understand on a budget how much we currently are looking at in terms of utilities. So if you're looking at a single-use building in the UAE market, that's what I'm saying, your average cost of utilities per annual budget is standing at 40%. Give or take 2%. If you go to mixed-use buildings, you're looking at an excess of 45 to 50% in the worst-case scenario. So only those numbers can justify that we take a step back and look at how can we reduce this big chunk that we are passing on to owners. When we say that, we tried a lot of ways of reactive measures to reduce energy. We use the traditional approach of trying to reduce lighting, installing or utilizing VFDs. We tried to use BMS systems, and in some buildings, they actually tried to use ADMS, which is the automated distribution systems, to identify leakage in power in surges and stuff. However, this doesn't really translate to savings on paper, to be honest. So at the end of the year, as a community manager, I began to ask myself, what exactly is the best way to reduce the figure that I allocate for utilities in a year? That's a question that actually brought us to this conversation on how to reduce service charges. And this is where my starting point was in reducing service charges for a number of buildings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Taking the discussion to Craig, of the breadth of work that you have done in Australia over the years, how have these contributed to heading towards net zero?
As Keith alluded to, Australia, we've been very focused on energy reduction now for well over 2 decades, 20 years. The foundation of what we've been doing has been deploying the metering and the collection of data that Keith mentioned across our assets. And that data, once it's refined, gives clear insights as to how we can save energy and charges within those properties. And coupled with a strategic capital upgrade program, replacing plant and equipment that is inefficient or lighting that is inefficient, You know, we've seen some buildings be able to achieve savings of almost up to 50% of their energy consumption, you know, over a period of time. You know, and that's not every building, but, you know, as Keith mentioned, you know, there was, you know, a range, but, you know, 20 to 50% of buildings, if not much has been done, is definitely possible using technology. Combining analytics is something we've been working on as well, to use that automated machine learning or rules-driven approach to identify other opportunities to save energy. And that is a process that runs in the background with no human interaction, mining the data of the building and how it's operating, and then flagging it either through a team or automatically to the operators to address, you know, those potential opportunities as well. Of recent times, we've been looking at new technologies, and two technologies we've looked at. One is personalized air conditioning, and the other is customer experience apps. And both of those have had, I believe, an impact on our progress to net zero. Personalized air conditioning is really about connecting users of the space with the building through the BMS on their mobile phone app to actually request comfort conditions to suit how they're feeling. And that enables occupants to warm or cool a space based on what they're feeling. And the reason we did this was because air conditioning complaints are in the top 3 complaints that we see across buildings. And I'm sure that that's probably global. It's maybe just not Australia as well. But, you know, we wanted to do air conditioning a different way to get a different result. So this software uses machine learning to actually learn what users are wanting by their request, and then adjusting through the BMS the zones differently across the building to deliver different experiences at different locations in the building. And, you know, it's what we've seen from deploying this has been better experiences for customers. And we've seen data like we've never seen before for air conditioning, you know, directly from the user about what they're experiencing. And one of the interesting data sets that we saw was that 50% of users in the space wanted their space warmer. And that meant that they were cold and that we were overcooling spaces. And there was an opportunity there for the software to automatically remove the overcooling of the spaces and save energy. And this unlocked energy savings, maybe the 1 or 2% or the 5%, so that they all add up to a big stream in our highest performing buildings where it's hard to actually unlock energy savings. So we're seeing new ways of unlocking energy savings in those buildings. This type of technology, I was listening to the last presentation, you know, it's hard to make people adopt technology, but this type of technology does make people a little nervous. People get concerned. Everyone is playing with the air conditioning, but our experience was we saw great results and we saw good customer feedback. And I think we'll see this as a bit of a future trend in real estate and occupant comfort, well-being, you know, around the globe. The other technology I spoke about was customer experience apps. And, you know, I think this is one of the biggest trends we're seeing globally. And this is, we're seeing major players like CBRE, JLL, we're seeing Equium, Marpic. 4 years ago, there was no apps in the, or very few apps in the marketplace. Now there's dozens of apps available. And the customer experience app is really about connecting people with the place that they work in every day. And it's about building communities and providing information and functionality in the palm of people's hands to give them better experiences in their workplace or where they live and be more connected. The other thing the apps have allowed us to do, and this is how it applies to net zero, is it allows us to push information to educate and inform and drive awareness around energy usage, net zero, sustainability strategies, and how the users of buildings actually impact net zero and sustainability targets, and how they can get on board and actually be a part of the net zero transition and journey that we're going on.
There's a question, and seems like it could be from Australia. Given the colossal amount of carbon fuels exported from Australia to other countries, is this not just transplanting net zero to another country? Craig, would you like to shed some light on that?
Well, it's a very political question, isn't it? Look, I think we all play our part in emitting carbon emissions. We all do it differently. You know, interestingly, here in Australia, there's a lot of talk about electrification, and that is about converting our buildings away from using fossil fuels and making, you know, what previously would have used a gas or a fossil fuel to function, use electricity so it can be powered with a renewable energy source that Keith spoke about previously, and effectively having zero carbon emissions. Australia is a big exporter of fossil fuels, and that is part of our economy. But we are seeing some of our biggest players like BHP and others start to think a little differently about what the future looks like and set their targets and strategies to be a little different into the future, which I think we all need to be doing.
Thank you, Craig. Neville, coming back to you. You talked about the traditional approaches of doing the BMS and ADMS and other stuff did not really get any results on the paper. So what technology did you use? Could you shed some light on that?
Okay, so what we adopted is rather than depending on the BMS system, which we are monitoring, why
or
don't
the energy
we
audits and retrofitting and all of
exactly.
that, you know?
Yeah. So BMS, we were monitoring. Energy audits are quite effective in understanding the historical performance of a building. However, they are not predictive as such, unless if you're taking a lot of variables in to make sure that you have an action plan to turn around where areas that you identify energy loss. And then we're looking at retrofitting. Now, retrofitting is a good idea, but the funding takes time to negotiate, 1 to 2 years to get the funding in place. And it actually sometimes takes a long time to complete the retrofit project. And by that time, your savings are not very minimal, and it's very difficult to put that on an annual basis. Like we as community managers have to produce a budget on an annual basis.
And
Dubai,
also,
yeah.
2 years in technology is a hell lot of time. Like
Exactly.
technology changes very rapidly. So 2 years
Yes.
is a very long time.
Yeah. So what we decided to do is we now decided to go through the Internet of Things. Now we are taking data like what Craig and Keith had alluded to earlier on, and this is what we are now using mostly. Now, how does that work? We take all the assets in the building, the FHUs, the AUs, the elevators, the fire alarm systems, everything that you would find on a BMS or in a DMS, we take that, we put it on a sensor, all right? Now, what happens with the sensor is that every 10 minutes or less cycles, it sends usage and data back to the server where it's run through algorithms, all right? Now, over a period of time, this data now is created to produce what is called predictive or machine learning data, where, for example, I'll give you a very small example. Ground floor lobby, we can predict that between 8 and 9 in the morning, we have increased footfall. So our temperature inflow or the AC will be higher at that time. But then between 10 to 12, there's less footfall, so we can reduce it. Now, we don't have anyone trying to do the human intervention of coming to fiddle with the controls. We don't need that because the system has learned from data to program that automatically in the background. Okay. Now, what that means is that over a period of time, you begin to have a system that is well regulated based on predictive data, and also it uses the current data that is being regulated every 10 minutes to help you take decisions. All right. And on a more practical level, which I noticed with my FM team is because we have data going every 10 minutes to the server, we are able to identify malfunctions in assets quicker and cheaper. So it takes us 10 minutes to know that the FHU in the plant room on, say, level 10 has stopped working because we can see the energy levels spiking, or we can see that there's a lot of energy leakage from a certain asset on a certain level. So now we are not being reactive, we are now being proactive. We are reducing cost of maintenance. We are also increasing the comfort of the occupants on a minute-to-minute basis. That's the mechanics of how it helps. So over a period of time, that actually helps you to reduce energy because you're using energy in an effective way. You just don't dump energy in the building, but you use energy that is actually being efficiently used. It depends on the occupancy, on the footfall, and there's a lot of variables that you can use on that.
I think that's very interesting. And the old saying, stitch in time saves 9. So it just does not apply to the asset itself. Here, the asset is consuming energy. And I think it's a two-pronged thing. Like, one is that the asset is deteriorating and will cost more to replace or maintain. And plus, while it is malfunctioning, it is draining the building energy.
Exactly.
Keith, would you like to add something to it?
No, absolutely. I mean, all what we be speaking today is very much aligned to, what the world should be doing in heading towards net zero. So, getting that level of data granularity, and having that information live, and the most important thing we've seen is, we collect a lot of data, right? And this data is there, but not many people actually use it, right? So we have gone into data overload to a certain extent in that sense, but in our view, it's not gone into overload, it's just that we are not using. And to use it, we need to use technology. As I mentioned, how do you use 14 million graphs per day, right? Now, for a commercial high-rise building, you'll be using, most probably the system would analyze anywhere around 2,000 to 6,000 graphs per day.
Wow.
Now, and that would deliver some significant results. The cost of analyzing this data at these speeds is minimal. If you were to monitor this level of data, as I said, we were supposed to do that manually. We need 500,000 people.
Yeah.
And instead of using 40 people, right? And that's what's the important part here. Sorry.
Exactly. And the thing is that we're trying to manage something, and to manage it, we must measure it, because what we cannot measure, we cannot manage. So we're trying to manage energy and building operations without being able to measure them. So I think this is very helpful that we need to measure all that data in order to manage it well. Keith, coming back, sorry, not Neville. You were talking about your approach to that, how you reduce service charge. Do you have any case study in UAE where you did something, so the audience and myself, we can get some, like, what kind of results do we expect? Very briefly, because we're running out of time and we've got some long list of questions. So briefly, if you can, just share some UAE-based case study.
All right, sure. I have results which I have managed to get with the team. So we have a commercial tower in Dubai, 68 levels. We're looking at 1.7 million square feet of built-up area in the tower. We partnered with EPT and Global to find out ways we could probably save energy in this building. Now, initially, the budget for utilities in this building before we took this intervention was utilities stood at 36 to 42% of the budget, annual budget. Now I'm taking on a variable of 5 years spread off. And then when we started this project, we had a very conservative target that we're going to save 910 or 900,000 per year in utilities. All right, so we got in, and the team in APT and Global advised us on how to do it. We set up the sensors, we did the training. Now, the training is a very integral part of the whole thing. So we have a team that is usually confident in things that are traditional, like the BMS systems. They look at the VFDs, and they have a pretty good grasp of the building assets, without looking at the machines. Now, for them to transition to a time where they are now looking at data, which is being generated remotely and is being put into algorithms, and it's a lot of work to change that mind culture. But we managed to do it, okay? And in this building, on a daily basis, we were looking at an excess of 900 graphs from all the assets in the building. And we had this monitored over a period of a year. And trust me, at the end of the year, we managed to not only achieve the target, but we exceeded. We managed to save 2.3 million dirhams in energy savings.
Can you restate that? How much?
2.3 million. 2.3 million
the entire
dirhams.
Budget of one of my buildings.
Yes, I saved that using data only, simple data. So
wow.
there is a lot of results that you can get from using this. But again, it's a culture change that you need to embed. Now, as leaders, we are supposed to show the team that we are now moving towards a different paradigm, and we believe in it. And if you do that, the team will follow through and help you deliver the results.
Sorry to cut you there, Neville. We are running really short of time now.
Sure.
In this discussion, we did not really look at the pandemic situation, the COVID-19, and how does that affect. I'll direct this question to Craig. How has the COVID-19 situation, affected, or what trends have you seen, with the apps or technologies that you have deployed vis-a-vis the COVID-19 situation?
Definitely seen a few. Just on the topic of data, people are saying data is the new oil, and really, like oil, for it to be useful, it needs to be refined. And I think that's what we're seeing. Companies like EP&T do well in really sort of refining the data so it's useful to achieve the savings that Neville has just described. But with regards to data in COVID-19, we're seeing our customers want more data. They want to know, more detail around how their premises are performing, who's visiting them, who's actually attending site, and how they control the COVID restrictions better and more efficiently within their premises. We're seeing visitor and contract management systems, which were mentioned in the previous presentation. We've deployed contractor check-in systems and also visitor management systems that are cloud-based and mobile-enabled to allow people to check in remotely and for a better understanding of who's coming to site, who's attending site, how long are they there for, have they checked out, and did they follow the COVID-19 restrictions as well. We're seeing touch-free and touchless technology, have a bit of a run. Particularly in bathrooms for amenities and also with access control, using mobile phones for access control rather than access cards seems to be another trend that is getting some momentum. The personalized air conditioning I mentioned, but those apps are now extending to add more functionality around managing the workplace. How do I book a desk in the workplace from home so I know I'm going to have a desk when I get there? And then that allows the manager of the premises to know how many people are coming in, manage the numbers, and then also use that data to effectively and efficiently clean the space where people have been sitting. So they're not cleaning every desk, they're just cleaning the desks that have been booked and used on that particular day, driving some more efficiencies. And then the customer experience apps, again, they've allowed us to actually communicate people with the customer at a deeper level, even when they weren't in the office or the buildings, they may have been at home. So we can still keep those communities connected and communicate important information to them via that piece of technology, and then help with the return to work and the office. And they seem to be the key trends that I've seen over the last 12 months with technology here in Australia.
That's very interesting. I mean, these are some very interesting ideas, and then the way technology is being used, especially like cleaning the desk, clean only the area which is going to be, that's some very, very practical operational efficiency. Coming back to Keith, the question is that being in Dubai often, how do you see Dubai reaching its 2050 net zero commitment?
Yes, if you really look, and if you listen to all of us here, and if you look around, it's the technologies and everything is very much around people, right? And if you look at this country, we have great leadership in every aspect, in all aspects. We have access to global technologies. That's not singular. And then this country has been able to do whatever it wants to do. Everybody knows that. But also, I think this country does it in a very humble way.
Right.
That listens and does things. And also, it's a get up and go and get it done kind of country. So I have absolutely no doubt that we'll hit a target of net zero buildings by 2050. And I think that it will be done like we discussed today, with incremental changes, but happening very quickly. It understands speed, it gets things done. So as I mentioned, the technologies that we've been discussing in a broader sense and also getting into the detail, I'm absolutely confident we'll get there with 2050. A lot of work, very exciting times, definitely.
Yep. And with the recent release of the 2040 master plan for Dubai, I think that is also going to contribute towards 2050 plan towards net zero.
Yep.
Absolutely, and also, constructing buildings at net zero level by 2030. It is quite ambitious, and it's doable.
Right. I think we have had a very good discussion. I would like to invite Harsha, if she's available here, she can join us.
Available. Great. So we actually had an amazing discussion, and it was so interesting to see. Normally when we talk about energy efficiency, not a lot of it is supported by data and actual measurable, quantifiable outcomes. And I think that was the most amazing part about this discussion, that I think everyone brought in quantifiable data that makes decision making, I think, a simpler process, if not an easier process. So thank you so much. I think we had so many questions that people were asking, and I hope all the panelists had a good time answering those questions. Yes.
Absolutely.
Great. So I just like to thank you again. And because it's such a prestigious panel, I would like to share with you, in case you weren't with us earlier, that while we are having a great time at iRECNESS Global, we've had over 400 delegates join us live for this particular panel discussion, which is great, from different parts of the world, which is terrific. And what we are very excited about is that now, after the global edition, we are going to be bringing iRECNESS to my most favorite city in the world, which is Dubai, on 9th of December, 2021. And hopefully we will do this as a physical event. That's our intention. And everything goes well, we will do this as a physical event. And we are not only going to be doing conferences, but we're going to be doing awards as well for community management. And we are supremely excited about it. And like always, we would love to have your support, your encouragement, just the way you supported iRECNESS Global. So thank you so much. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Bakar. Thank you, Neville. And thank you, Craig, for joining us for this session. Thank you so much. We had a terrific time hosting you.